Hello, BookTube. I'm Peg, the Book Prize Addict, back for the second time in one day with some great book prize news. The part of the National Book Awards for translated literature, the Longlist, just came out a little while ago, and so I'm back to tell you about those. First of all, I want to say that a little bit about this prize. This is the first time a translated literature prize has been included in the National Book Awards, and I think it couldn't come at a better time. I've followed translated literature in the English prizes for quite a few years, and I know that of course has become the Man Booker International. And I read an article just a few years ago that there are many more books translated from English into other languages than vice versa. And it appears that English speakers, probably especially Americans, aren't that interested in what other countries are writing or doing or saying. I mean, that may have been true at one time, but I think this is a great time for the book community to say, hey, that's not us. We are interested in other countries and value your literature. And I think this is a great way to do it with this announcement of this new prize. It's just the right year for it, too. Okay, I also want to say a little bit about the judges in this. As has been mentioned before, what's on a book prize list really depends on the judges that year. They could have been completely different if it was another year. And I took a look at the book prize, at the judges for this one, and they have some very heavy hitters on this. There's 5 judges for each of the National Book Award prizes, each 5 different prizes. And this one, the chairman of the panel is Harold Augenbraum, who's the acting editor of the Yale Review and the former director of the National Book Foundation. And he's translated quite a few works himself. The others are all both novelists and translators. The biggest name I see here is Susan Bernofsky, who directs the literary translation program at Columbia University School of Arts, and she has won many awards. I believe she translates from German, and she has won many awards, including the Independent Foreign Fiction Prize, which became the Man Booker International. So I think it really shows that the judges are very literary readers with the books that they have chosen. And I think they're very literary type books that people who like to read literary fiction will be pleased with these selections, most of which I had not heard of before, and I kind of try to follow what's out there. Okay, let's get started here. I'll put the link at the bottom so you can run off or take a look yourself at the 10. Since I just got it, I haven't had time to look how to pronounce the author's name, so I'm going to leave that to you. I usually do try to look it up, but I just wanted to rush and get this video with the breaking news out before I had a chance to look. So, okay, we are starting out with a book called Disoriental. This is from Iran, and it deals with a young woman who fled from Iran with her family to France when she was 10 years old, and she's now 25, and memories are beginning to come back to her about her life there and her ancestors there. And it says there's one scene that takes place in a Paris fertility clinic where it's almost a fantasy saga with her generations of her family coming back to advise her and talk to her. And it also says this is actually about the modern woman and her division between the New World and her ancestors. Next we have, oh, come on. Oh. Next we have a book from Argentina, Cama Madre, I guess you would call it. It starts out in Buenos Aires in 1907 when a doctor does a misguided experiment and then goes to 100 years later where a celebrated artist goes to extreme measures to have an aesthetic transformation. And it goes on to talk about the extremes that people might go to for transformations, I guess physical. It calls it darkly funny, and it involves strange ants, body parts, and obsessive love affairs. Next we have The Beekeeper, Rescuing the Stolen Women of Iraq. This is a nonfiction, so this is all literature, not just fiction. And this actually deals with the women in Iraq who have been brutalized by ISIS, and an actual beekeeper who forms a network of volunteers to help them and transport them out of the country. And again, I think it's based on a true story. Next we have One Part Woman. This is set in India during the colonial period, and it deals with a young married couple who seem to be infertile, and they take part in a carnival. I guess this really happens, where one night during the carnival all marriage rules are suspended and any consensual sex between man and woman is okayed. That must be something. Anyway, this, I'm not sure what happens after that. It'll be interesting to see. But this, they call this an attack on the caste system and the traditional values that are still prevalent in India. Okay, next we have Love. This is Norwegian. This actually is in my library. I've seen it, so this has been out for a while. This deals with a Norwegian mother and son who moved to a very isolated small town in northern Norway, and she somehow doesn't realize it's his birthday and goes on some sort of nightly mission, and he goes somewhere else, and it's, I guess, the story told jointly between the two of them and their troubles, or I assume something happens, something goes on there. They do lead separate journeys, it says. Okay, next we have Wait, Blink. This is by a Norwegian poet. It's about a young literature student, Sigrid, and her encounters with all kinds of different artistic movie directors and performance artists, and I'm not sure what goes on here. But anyway, it says it's a group of desperate characters, the story of, and actually this has already been made into a movie called Women in Oversized Men's Shirts, so I'm not sure if that's available or not. Might be interesting. Okay, next we have an Italian novel, Trick, and this deals with a grandfather who's lived someplace for many years, an apartment, I believe, in Naples, and his daughter and grandson come to live with him, and there seems to be quite a standoff or something between the young grandson and the grandfather. I'm not sure exactly what, but yeah, so I don't know if this one is satirical, maybe. I'm not sure. Okay, I do plan to read it. The next one looks like I put the picture wrong, but it actually is just like this, and it's called The Emissary. It's from Japan, and it has to do with a futuristic Japan where there's much suffering going on from a terrible disaster, and in this world the children are born older, it said gray-haired and elderly with much wisdom, and it has a child, a grandson, and living again with his grandfather, and the grandfather goes to great lengths to protect the the child. I guess this might be a little bit, I don't know, dystopian or fantasy, I'm not sure, but anyway, that does sound interesting. Okay, next we have, I'm on one you've probably heard of if you've been into translated literature at all, Flights. This is from the Polish, and it won the Man Booker International Award. It's kind of an experimental type novel that goes into kind of many different paths and talks about actually what it means to be a traveler. Some people have purposely read it on an airline flight, and it was everybody seemed to like it, and it did win, and there's lots of reviews out there of this, and it's pretty readily available now. Okay, and last we have, this isn't very good, it's called Ethereal Worlds. It's Russian short stories. It's by a woman, and it said this is one of the first women writers who has become quite important in Russian literature. Again, it compares the stories to Chekhov and Gogol as far as satire and a melancholy feeling goes. So that's really about all I know of that, but I'm anxious to read it. So I'm going to go to my library now and see if I can find any of these and start reading on them. These all look really good. I'll be back tomorrow with the poetry and the nonfiction. And I even have a teammate, helper on the nonfiction one, somebody you all know who's read every nonfiction book published in the U.S., I'm sure, is going to be teaming up with me to help me tomorrow on that one. Okay, see you then. Bye.